You know the KinAhan cartel that controls drugs in Ireland now? Well, before them, there was another family doing the same thing.
This was a man who was really the godfather of heroin in Ireland.
Some of the kids were robbing their mothers, their fathers. There were syringes on balconies.
This was a life and death issue for an awful lot of people.
Young people were dying, communities were devastated. He was a mercenary. All roads led to Larry Dunne.
Larry Dunne and his brothers were the first ones to flood Dublin with heroin. This was back in the 1970s and 1980s. The Dunnes were a big family. They were into everything illegal you can think of. They started out doing theft and armed robberies and all sorts of criminal stuff. Then they figured out they could make way more money selling drugs. They brought in massive amounts of heroin and sold it in working class neighborhoods in the inner city.
That we may have as many as 4,500 heroin users in Dublin city.
The drugs wrecked people's lives. Even their own relatives got destroyed by it. The brothers didn't all work together as one gang. Different combinations of them teamed up at different times. But Larry was the one who became the most notorious criminal in the family. Once the drug money started rolling in, Larry moved from his council house to a detached house up in the scenic Dublin mountains. He wanted to get far away from the decaying communities where he was selling drugs. He went so far away that he actually told his family not to call him or visit his house. Here's the crazy part. Larry was this massive figure in the criminal underworld, but he was never charged or convicted of any serious crimes. He only got in trouble for stupid stuff like driving without insurance. That got him banned from driving. So to get around this, Larry bought himself a horse and carriage. He'd use it to take himself and his wife Lily to the nearby Blue Light pub for drinks on a regular basis. He was the man at the top. He was just the supplier. His brothers ran the operations in the city and communities. Larry had one rule: Larry doesn't carry. That meant he stayed far away from the actual drugs. He used a group of dealers to push the stuff. This made it really hard for the Gardaí to pin anything on him. He was living a lavish lifestyle. His brother Henry bought a racehorse. They didn't know that all this flashy spending was attracting the interest of the Gardaí. The head of the Garda was putting pressure on his senior officers to get Larry off the streets, or at least hit them hard and stop their criminal activities. This time in Dublin was gritty, poor, and politically tense. The city showed signs of being stuck between tradition and change. The 70s and 80s saw most of Dublin recovering from decades of economic stagnation. Some streets were run down. The unemployment rate was rising. This caused a mini-migration of young Irish people moving to America or Britain to find work. Over in Northern Ireland, there were serious issues to be sorted out. Bombings in 1974 killed 33 people in the city. The church had major influence back then. Ireland was a very conservative nation. Divorce and contraception were banned in the country. Pubs served as the main form of entertainment for the residents.
There is no doubt about it, but inside here the stout's flowing and the pub is packed with people from all walks of life.
By the 1980s, heroin addiction hit the country hard. Dublin got hit the hardest, especially places like Ballymun, Finglas, and the inner city flats. Crime was on the rise. More notorious gangland figures started to show their faces. But despite all the social and political problems, the Irish still showed a sense of pride and community. Local markets were popular, full of life, bargains, and banter. Markets like Moore Street were the heart of it all. The women known as the Moore Street traders sold fruit, vegetables, and flowers from their wooden stalls. They'd shout out the prices in their strong Dublin accents.
My name is Caroline Allwright. I'm over 40 years here, about 46 years. I'm fourth generation.
The smallest butcher shop in Ireland, but we give you honest to God value now.
£5 a pound of carrot, £8 a pound of sprouts.
Ox-hearts, lamb's hearts, rib steak, round steak and sirloin steak. And we give you £2 of chops, not £1. £2 of chops now for 50 pence.
Carrot, turn up to parsnip. And what else do you like with the cauliflower?
No, girl, you're saving nearly 80 pence on every shoulder of bacon you buy here this morning. Isn't that value?
Liberty Market was located near Meath Street. It was packed on weekends. This was a place where you could buy anything from second-hand clothes to dodgy electronics and the popular bootleg tapes. Money was tight. The markets filled the gaps the government could never fill. They helped ordinary Irish people make ends meet. Larry Dunne's greed damaged some of this Irish culture and community. Heroin tears families apart from the inside. It doesn't just affect the person who uses it. It leads to lies, theft, and crime going on the rise as people try to get their fix. Larry Dunne died at the age of 72. He was one of 16 children in a family that had 11 boys and 5 girls. His father, Christy Bronco Dunne, was Ireland's first godfather. He styled himself on Michael Corleone from the Godfather movies. From his first stint in Mountjoy prison in 1968 to his conviction for stolen checks in Spain in 1985, he was regarded as one of the state's most incorrigible and flamboyant criminals. Christy started his life in the very markets that his sons would later help destroy. At 8 years old, he was working in Hive Market. He was in and out of jail throughout his life. He would also go away for work to England when he wasn't in jail. This led the boys to roam the streets. The family bounced around a few areas before finally settling down on Rutland Avenue in Crumlin. A few of them weren't involved in crime and led decent, respectable lives in Ireland and England. In May 1962, Larry was just 12 years old. His brother Michael was just 8 years old. They took off to London to look for their father. Can you imagine that? 2 young kids travelling to London by themselves. They hung around the city for a few days before they got separated in Hyde Park. A missing child article ran on the front of the Daily Mirror. That's what led to them reuniting with their father. The authorities sent them back to Dublin. Not long after, the 2 of them ended up in what they called industrial schools. 6 of their brothers went to these places too. Larry was sent off to Letterfrack in County Galway, then later to Dangin in County Offaly. He didn't stay there long though. As a teenager, Larry went back to England. He racked up over 18 convictions for petty crimes. Over the years, Larry was taking part in petty crimes in Ireland and England. When he was in his early 20s, he joined some of his older brothers who were running a gang that took part in armed robberies. Larry himself got shot in the arm by accident during a botched robbery. Larry was a latecomer to serious crimes, but what happened was that he learned quickly. His other brothers decided to be criminals mainly on the street level. Larry was different. He was the only one who planned criminal activities on a long-term basis where illegal drugs were concerned. He had some troubled times in 1979. He got caught up with drugs and started getting high on his own supply. It was his wife and 3 children that stopped him from going down the addict route. He settled down and went back to his criminal ways. Larry Dunne started making big money importing heroin from Iran. He worked with his supplier, who was known only as the American. This was a time when drug traffickers were running drugs on the Golden Crescent trafficking route. This route covered regions like Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. These areas became the world's major heroin production zones. It was easy to get drugs into Europe at that time through this smuggling route. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution, state control was weak. The borders with Afghanistan and Pakistan were practically non-existent. This turmoil made Iran a key transit route for opium and morphine base from Afghanistan. The raw product was mostly processed into heroin in Pakistan or Iran. Then it was smuggled west through Turkey, then into the rest of Europe through the Balkans or the Mediterranean. Early in the 1980s, Irish and British dealers, including the Dunne family, were sourcing heroin that had been smuggled through these routes. The drugs didn't move directly from Iran to Ireland, but Iran was a crucial link in the pipeline. The heroin that reached Dublin in those days was called Persian brown because of the region it came from. The first time Larry got into serious trouble with the law was when he broke his own rule, the same one I mentioned before, Larry doesn't carry. On October 13, 1980, around 9 in the night, 2 groups of Gardaí did an operation on his house in Carrickmount Drive. There were 2 operations on the same house at the same time. One group of detectives was investigating the Dunne drug empire. Another group was targeting the other criminal activities he took part in, like jewelry heists. They searched his home for stolen jewelry. One detective found heroin in a pillowcase in one of the children's bedrooms. They also found some cocaine, cannabis, and weighing scales in the house. Larry was trying to make sure there was no confusion. He probably wanted to protect his wife and children. He stepped up and let the officers know that he was the one responsible for everything. Then he went silent. This was an interesting case. The charges were dropped against the other family members who were tied to the drugs and were the ones who had brought the drugs to the house. Larry was released on bail not long after. He continued to operate his drug gang. In a move that was like spitting in the face of the Gardaí, he bought a house for £100,000 all in cash. The house was located on Woodside Road in the Dublin Mountains. It had a view of the Dublin Bay. This purchase was made in May 1982. That house would be around £450,000 in 2025. The trial for the drugs started roughly a year after this purchase was made. This was in the spring of 1983. Courtroom reporters stated that Larry Dunne selected his own jurors for the trial. He picked ones he could easily bribe or threaten. This seemed to work. When the jurors retired on April 26th, a single juror held out for a not guilty verdict on all charges except the possession of drugs for personal use. The presiding judge refused to accept the verdict. At 11 o'clock that night, the jury foreman told the judge again they had been unable to reach a verdict. While all this was going on, Larry Dunne had time to order a bottle of champagne from the Legal Eagle pub. This pub was across the street from the Four Courts courthouse. He did this in anticipation of a favourable verdict. This move changed the legal system and procedures in Ireland. Larry was scheduled to appear for a second trial at the Central Criminal Court on June 21, 1984. This time, there was legislation that allowed majority verdicts in criminal trials for the first time. This move was to reduce intimidations and bribery in trials, especially ones including gangs and organised crime. This is legislation that is still valid and in use today in Irish courts. A day and a half into his second trial, Larry Dunne saw all the evidence being presented. He knew his time as a free man was coming to an end. So at lunchtime, he went across the street to the Molly Malone pub. He changed his clothes and got into a waiting taxi and disappeared. This move changed Ireland's legal history again. The trial proceeded without his presence. The jury in this trial took a little under 20 minutes to convict him on all counts. These charges carried a maximum of 14 years in prison. The press interviewed his wife after he went into hiding. She claimed that Larry was well away by now. She pleaded that he should stay away in a safe house. He was in hiding for around 6 months. He made his way to Spain. In 1985, Dunne was arrested while he was trying to enter Portugal with false documents. He was then extradited back to Ireland to serve his 14-year sentence. During his time in prison, things changed fast. The new dealers took over and started to control the drug trade. Most notable were John Gilligan's gang and the KinAhan cartel. The KinAhan seized total control of the Irish drug trade. This happened after the man who started the large-scale importation of heroin into Ireland went to prison. Dunne and the Gardaí kind of shared the same sentiment. The Gardaí said the days of the ordinary criminals were over. Larry Dunne said that if the people of Ireland thought he was bad, wait until they saw what was coming. He was right. The years after he lost his grip on the Dublin drug trade, the bloodbaths started over money, territory, and control. Dunne became a thing of the past. The criminal underworld moved on rapidly without him. He returned to live in Carrickmount Drive with his daughter. Lily passed away in 2000. At this time, Larry was suffering from lung cancer. When he was taken to St. James Hospital, it is reported that he died from self-inflicted wounds. This is a tragic end to the life of the man who started the Dublin illegal drug trade, but it's not as tragic as the families and lives he damaged for profits and notoriety.